Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Raw Prospect Podcast. We are live after Sunday Night Football, after an amazing week 2 of games, a lot of close games in the early window, and then an amazing finish to the Sunday Night Football game between the Patriots and the Dolphins. We're going to get into all of that with our weekly Raw Rundown, and we're going to start it with Prospect of the Week and then finish the show with a preview of tomorrow night's Monday night doubleheader with the Saints and the Panthers and the Browns and the Steelers. But before we get into all that, be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. About 75% of you have not subscribed yet. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And then share it with your friends as well. Joining me from Houston, Texas, the Stat King himself, Mr. Michael. How you doing?
Doing well. Great day of football. We had 8 games decided by a touchdown or less. So 8 games decided by 1 score or less. A lot of great games, including 2 overtime games in the first window of games, the early window, the 1 o'clock window. Great day of football. You know, the Sunday night game I thought was fantastic between 2 division rivals. I was really looking forward to that game. But we're going to start today's show with Prospect of the Week. This is our second Raw Prospect of the Week of this football season. I'll pass it to you first. Who is your Prospect of the Week for week 2 of NFL and week 3 of college?
My Prospect of the Week is a slightly older player than what we've gone with the past 2 weeks. I'm going with Baker Mayfield. This week, he led the Bucks to a 2-0 record with the win over the Bears today. And he's not playing like some amazing style of football that we haven't seen before. I mean, this is the same Baker Mayfield that we saw take a team to the divisional round 3 years ago. I mean, we know it's in there with him. And now it's just so good to see him back in a good situation, able to see the field, make good reads, have the weapons to throw the ball up to as well. I think this might possibly be the best group of weapons that Baker Mayfield has had in his career. Depending on how you feel about that Jarvis-Odell duo. But that's not a conversation we'll get into right now. For right now, you just got to give Baker his props. Whether this keeps going or not, this start to the season this year has been very impressive.
Yeah, Baker's been really impressive, and he has that Bucks team at 2-0 after there were videos that came out in training camp where, you know, he was missing throws all over the place, and that Buccaneers team did not look like a team, at least in shorts and T-shirts in training camp, that was going to have a lot of success early on. But give credit to Baker Mayfield. It seems like he has a little edge to him this year. And you're right. I mean, he's not doing anything spectacular, but he's playing winning football. And he's got Mike Evans, who looks really good. He's got Chris Godwin. And he's got a defense that I think is capable of keeping that team in games. So maybe we'll mention the Buccaneers later, but I went along with a similar theme for my Prospect of the Week. This quarterback, I don't think you'd say he's putting up like spectacular eye-popping numbers, at least yet. He's not doing anything, you know, that we haven't seen from him over the course of his career. But he's playing a winning brand of football in a new offense, and that's Lamar Jackson. Look, last week, week 1, in a new offense under Todd Monken, who comes from Georgia, after a couple great years at Georgia, comes to the Baltimore Ravens. And last week was bumpy. It did not look great. They got the win. And then this week, on the road against a divisional opponent, I thought Jackson was exceptional. The stats won't really show it. I mean, it was 24-33 for 200-some yards and 2 touchdowns, but he didn't turn the ball over. He threw a fantastic deep ball, an absolutely majestic missile way downfield to Zay Flowers to get them in the red zone on the way to a score in which Jackson hit Mark Andrews in the end zone. But arguably, I mean, his best pass came on a pivotal possession early in the fourth quarter when he hit Nelson Aguilar on a key third down. He spread the ball around. I mean, you saw Aguilar get involved. We saw Devin Duvernay get involved. We saw Zay Flowers get involved. We saw Odell get involved until he got hurt. He spread the ball around to all the weapons. We even saw, I think, Rashad Bateman get a couple touches. So I love the way Lamar looks. Again, he's not putting up spectacular numbers, but he's playing winning football, using his legs when he needs to, avoiding getting hit. I just love the way that Lamar is playing football. And if he continues this, Baltimore already looks to be set up in great position within the landscape of the AFC, but the AFC North in particular, as they already have that road win against Cincinnati. And with today's win, he improved to 47-16 as a starter in the National Football League. That's pretty damn good. And I know quarterback wins, that stat isn't everything, but if you win like 75, 80% of your games, you're doing a pretty good job as a quarterback.
Yeah.
So Lamar Jackson, man, keep an eye out for him.
Definitely. That offense started to click. I think that that 7 route that he hit down the right sideline for a touchdown, I think it was in the second quarter. That's when I was like, okay, this is a legit passing offense now. So we'll see where that goes. But for now, let's get into the raw rundown. Our second edition of this. If you didn't see the debut of this segment last week, it's basically pretty self-explanatory. We were going to run through 3 teams that we thought stood out in a positive way and 3 teams that we thought stood out in a negative way for that particular week. So for week 2 here, I want to pass it over to you. Let's start with the positive side of things. Which team stood out to you?
Starting with the teams that trucked, and Imy and I are both going to choose 3. And we might have some overlap, which could be a good thing, and it also might not be such a good thing if we all choose the same teams. But for me, I got to start with the Buffalo Bills. And look, I don't know what to think of the Raiders yet. They don't look like a terrible team. They also don't look like a great team, but it's a short sample size. I need to see more from the Raiders to officially declare what that team is, right? But I thought the Bills responded in a big way today against the Las Vegas Raiders after, that Monday night game got away from them and Josh Allen did not have a good outing with his 3 interceptions, 4 total turnovers. I thought they responded in a big way. And the biggest thing I think for Buffalo, the biggest development that came out of this game is they ran the ball fantastically well. Their running game was balanced. It wasn't overly just Josh Allen, although he did make some plays extending with his legs. You talk about what they did on the ground today, 183 total yards on the ground. James Cook, his best day yet as a professional in the National Football League, 123 yards on 17 carries. You had Damian Harris chipping in for 33 yards on 7 carries. You had Latavius Murray with 22 yards on 6 carries. It was a balanced run game, and it wasn't all Josh Allen. You love to see that from a Buffalo run game that struggled to be consistent. If they can get that run game, they will be a contender, not only within the scope of the AFC, but to win the Super Bowl. That's what they've been missing. I thought they did a good job of stopping the run. They ran the ball. They stopped the run on the other side. Josh Jacobs was held to a career-low day in rushing yards, albeit only on 9 carries. And I thought Josh Allen looked really good. There's a stat. He completed 7 of 8 passes for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns while throwing on the run. He didn't necessarily take as many shots down the field, but he completed a lot of passes. He was efficient. He didn't turn the ball over. And look, one thing I learned is that this Buffalo team still has they kind of have that Mike Tyson quality to them. Like, they might not play great every week. They might not necessarily be buttoned up every week. But man, when they are, they can knock you out. They're still that kind of team. And they're still missing a couple key contributors. So I liked what I saw from the Buffalo Bills. That was a great way to respond at home against an AFC opponent after sort of a bad loss on Monday Night Football, a game that they should have won.
Right. And this is the evolution of Josh Allen's game. I think this is the direction it needs to go, working in the quick game and then picking his spots to take those shots down the field. It's a very similar thing to what we saw with Patrick Mahomes right around 2018-ish. I remember they didn't start off as well offensively as they normally would. And that was around the time where Andy Reid went to a lot more RPOs and a lot more quick passing game to where it is now, where it's death by 1,000 cuts. So it's still a process in terms of getting to that level, but I think that's where Josh Allen needs to go with his game. For me, my first team I want to shout out the Washington Commanders, and specifically Eric Bieniemy for the job that he did today in that comeback in Denver, in Mile High, one of the toughest places to play, down 18 points with a quarterback making his third start in the NFL. I mean, the game script, the play calling coming out in that second half, it was extremely sharp, and they didn't miss a beat. Sam Howell clearly knew where he wanted to go with the football, and they got it. Once they got him in rhythm, things really started to click, and they started just running up and down the field. I think it's really early, but I'd say early returns are showing that Eric Bieniemy is a legit coach and probably should have been hired as a head coach years ago. But better late than never. I think this is the year where Eric Bieniemy probably gets a coaching job somewhere.
Yeah, it's a big year for Ron Rivera and that staff in Washington. It didn't start out well, and the Commanders were actually my second team, to be clear. So we do have some overlap. So I might as well just build off what you were saying. I'm really impressed with Sam Howell. I texted this to you earlier today, and we had a conversation. Like, it looks like the Commanders found a quarterback with some moxie who doesn't get rattled when he has bad plays. And then just his third start and his first ever start on the road in a tough place to play, like you mentioned, in Mile High, after getting down, I think it was 21-3 at one point, he played really well. Look, it wasn't perfect, and it wasn't a perfect game from the Commanders by any stretch of the imagination. But this isn't teams that played perfect. This is teams that looked good, right? This is teams that impressed us. Or in other words, teams that trucked is what we're calling it. And look, they had 90 yards on their first 20 plays, only had 3 points to show for it, but they didn't panic. They continued to play. Things turned late in the second half. He leads them on a 9-play, 49-yard drive, which ended in a touchdown pass to Logan Thomas, which almost got Logan Thomas killed, by the way. And then from there, Howell took off. He lit up the scoreboard, 3 second-half touchdown drives. I thought that pass to Terry McLaurin was next level. That was incredible. And he showed poise, confidence, decisiveness, and he's got the talent. He can extend plays. He's got a little special to him. We all know that there's another quarterback coming out of the University of North Carolina who we all really love in this upcoming draft. But Sam Howell, man, I really like him. I think they got a quarterback with some moxie who's not going to be scared, will stand tall in the pocket and deliver, the ball. And they'll spread the love. Hit 10 different targets today. That's impressive. And your first ever start on the road, 2 touchdowns, almost 300 yards passing. Good for the Commanders. Like, they did not play a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, But the other good thing they have going for them is that defensive front. Deron Payne, Chase Young, they were all over the Cardinals last week. And in that second half, they reintroduced themselves to Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. They were all over them in that second half, and they lead that defense. So don't overlook this Washington team. I'm not sure what the season ahead holds for them, whether or not they can actually maybe contend for a playoff spot in the NFC. I mean, their division is tough, one of the toughest in its own right. But good start for Washington. They have not lost the
Definitely.
games since Dan Snyder was ousted out of the franchise. So good for them.
The witch is dead. Sam Howell looks like Baker Mayfield to me. I just wanted to throw out that comparison. Baker Mayfield with a little bit of a quicker release. That's kind of the vibe he gives me. That same chip on his shoulder, that same energy that he plays with, he brings to the team. So really good stuff from the Commanders. For my next team, at number 2, I was gonna say the Dallas Cowboys, but I'm gonna go in a different direction. I don't want to say the Cowboys every week because that's just a homer pick. That's a it's a shortcut. I'm gonna go with the Seattle Seahawks. I think after week 1, there was a lot of questions about, okay, maybe this defense isn't as good as we thought. Okay, maybe Geno was a fluke. But no, I mean, they went in on the road to a hostile environment, to a team that was having their home opener with a lot of hype and a lot of energy behind them coming off a big win. And they went in there and got the win in a tight game all the way through. It was a shootout, and the winning play ended up being the pick six that they had on a just really good play by the defender, just reading Jared Goff like a book. This defense, the pass rush, I still have questions about it, but that secondary definitely looked a little bit more like we thought they would look like this year. I think this team is capable of winning shootouts. They showed that last year, and I think Geno Smith is here to stay. He wasn't a fluke, and they're going to continue to win these shootout type games.
Yeah, and just so we have it on record, this is getting very easier for me because I also have the Seahawks as my third team that looks good. We do have a little overlap today, and to prove it to you, I wrote these teams before the podcast started. Bills, Seahawks, and Commanders were my 3 teams. To build off what you're saying, I guess, I thought, it wasn't a perfect performance by any stretch from Geno Smith, but after last week in a game in which they really struggled in the second half, I thought he atoned for a couple of his late mistakes, including that terrible sack that he took on one of the drives. I can't remember exactly which drive. It was nearing the end of the game, like second half of the fourth quarter, and he should have just thrown the ball away. It wasn't a perfect game by any stretch, but I thought, that overtime drive was really good. Made some throws in the face of pressure. He was hitting Tyler Lockett. He was hitting DK Metcalf, who actually had to leave this game for a while, but then came back. So hopefully he's okay. He completed 6 of his 7 passes on that drive. He hit Noah Fant for a big 17-yard completion to start the drive. He hit DK Metcalf for 16 yards on a big 3rd down and 6 in the middle of that drive. He hit Colby Parkinson, one of their tight ends, who I thought had a really big game, for 21 yards. And then in the face of pressure, he extended the play, and he found Tyler Lockett for that 6-yard touchdown to walk it off. 32 of 41, in control all game, threw for 330 yards against a Lions defense that looked pretty good last week in Kansas City, on the road in a game which the Seahawks, they didn't have to have this, but it was good to get it. You'd
Yeah,
much rather be 1-1 than 0-2. And I thought he played a
especially in
big,
that division as
yeah,
well.
he played a big time game on the road against a team that had extra time to prepare and was coming off a huge win and was feeling really good about themselves. Um, and they did it without, their starting tackles. I mean, this was really a tough spot for the Seahawks. Stone Forsythe and Jack Curran did a fantastic job filling in for those guys. Zero penalties and zero QB hits or sacks allowed from those backup tackles. Just massive performance from those guys. And then Tariq Woolen actually left this game mid-game with a shoulder injury, so hopefully he's okay. But that gave way to Trey Brown, who you mentioned, who got the pick six. Read Jared Goff like a book. And that was a massive play for Seattle. So good job by Seattle. Really big win for them.
Definitely. Okay, my last team was the Atlanta Falcons. Um, this team is 2-0 now, and I mean they're pretty much exactly what we thought they would be. The difference is they're able to get enough offense to win those tight games, and their defense is solid. Their defense is upgraded on every level, and then the offense has been able to just be electric with Bijan Robinson today. Tyler Algier still got 16 carries, wasn't nearly as efficient, but Bijan, man, 23 touches, and I think was over 140 yards from scrimmage, if I'm not mistaken. Was just taking over that game. I think moving forward here for the Falcons, Desmond Ritter showed some good things. Um, there's a little bit more you can take in terms of, okay, we got our playmakers involved a little bit more. I think Drake London was 6 receptions for 72 yards and a touchdown, a little bit more like what you would expect from a top 10 draft pick wide receiver. So the Falcons, they can win the games with this game script. There's no question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great feeling to be 2-0. And look, as opposed to what you can argue in college, where I think style points in some areas matter a little bit more, style points don't matter in the NFL. Like, you just got to win games. It doesn't have to look pretty all the time. You don't have to be perfect. You just got to find ways to win games. And in a division that's pretty wide open right now, I mean, we already mentioned the Buccaneers. They've started 2-0. The Saints have an opportunity to start 2-0, but the Panthers could beat them tomorrow. We'll talk about that later. In a division which we think is wide open, but maybe not as strong as some of the other divisions in the NFL, absolutely. The Falcons, I mean, you can nitpick where you want, but they've looked good. And Bijan Robinson had a great day. And that's good as a Longhorns fan. So, yeah. So let's move on to teams that sucked.
Yeah,
um,
this, yeah.
this is my favorite segment of the week. Let's start with you. Who was your first team that sucked or stunk?
Oh man, my first team that stunk. It's time to talk about the Bears, y'all. Y'all have heard this conversation before. It's you chose the Bears as well. We can go back and forth here. Um, I just think this Bears team, like, blame has to go on Justin Fields, sure. Blame has to go on the coaches, sure. But I think a little bit more blame should be put on the front office a little bit. This defense is not good, and I think just from a defensive line standpoint, they could have done a little bit better to address those things. I think going out and spending big money on a linebacker when your front four is as bad as it is comical. Even with Tremaine Edmonds, being as good a player as he is, a linebacker just isn't going to make the impact that a high level pass rusher is. Just little things like that, little decisions here and there. Like, I know I'm nitpicking, but this Bears team, they're looking like a they're looking like they're on a track down Caleb Williams Central here, along with a couple other teams.
Yeah, and I mean, would that be the worst thing in the world? Probably not. But
No.
man, I mean, it's bad right now in Chicago. This is not the way you wanted to start, especially as a front office and as a guy that loves Justin Fields. Because I think he's like a really good athlete. I mean, he's one of the better athletes in the league, but
Fun to watch. Yeah.
he's really fun to watch at sometimes. Other times not so much. Uh, he still makes some wow plays, but you got to find some consistency, and they're just not doing that. Again, it's not all his fault, but I mean, they started the game really good.
Yeah.
75 yards and a touchdown, 5-yard touchdown run from Justin Fields. But things sputtered from there over the next 6 drives. They only generated 62 yards on their next 6 drives combined. Fields missed a host of throws. He turned the ball over again and again, especially in his own end, which you can't really do. I believe the Buccaneers had a pick 6 on a ball that I don't know if it just slipped out of Fields' hands or what happened, but basically threw it right to the defensive lineman or the linebacker. He did have a nice throw to Chase Claypool on a touchdown. So again, there is some good there. It's not all bad. But this offensive line got dominated up front today. The Buccaneers had 6 sacks. Justin Fields is on pace to be sacked 85 times this year, by the way. So not good there. It wasn't good. And their defense they don't get off the field on third down. I believe the Buccaneers were 7 of 11 on third down conversions today. Not good enough from the Bears. I think they're spending money in the wrong spots. It's just I don't know what you say right now. They need to turn this around quick, or things could get really ugly.
Yeah. I, it just doesn't feel like any one thing they can hang their hat on right now. Like
Right.
it just feels like everything is just going sideways. And I mean, it's bad for Bears fans right now. And as fast as Justin Fields is, I just can't help but get the feeling that when he's dropping back, he just drops back so slowly and so casually. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah, and one more thing, you pointed out something really I think that's smart. There are 0-2 teams right now in the National Football League, and you don't want to start. I mean, it's not like you're dead in the water. There are teams that have come in more recently, especially that have recovered from 0-2 starts. Like it's not the end all be all, but all the other teams, it seems like even the Cardinals, man, even though they lost that game to the Giants today, it seems like they have a thing, at least a thing or two that they can hang their hat on, that they can say, okay, we may have not won these games, but we did this well, or, we've done this well. Like for the Patriots, for example, like we haven't won these games, but we've hung around, we played good defense, we've forced some turnovers, we've made some plays on special teams. Like there are signs of a good football team in there, even though they're not winning.
Right.
And so, but with the Bears, it's just like, where is it? I mean, where do you point to at this point? So look, I don't want the Bears to suck. I'd love for the Bears to be, I don't know if there's a chance that they can be good this year, but I'd love for them to at least be better than this.
Competitive,
Yeah, competitive. And
or at least fun to watch.
yeah, and that's just not really happening. So I don't know where you go. So
Yeah, we'll see what happens. It felt like a team that was really hyped up. For me personally, I didn't really buy into the hype that much because I'm someone who, when it comes to quarterbacks, I want to see it first. And I never really saw it as a passer for Justin Fields. And with the offseason to prepare for these defenses, if your only calling card is running the football, it's just going to be hard to move the ball. I do think they could have done more to design some running game stuff for Justin Fields into the mix. But regardless, let's move on to our next team. Who did you have as your second team on the list of teams who sucked this week?
Well, I want to preface this like this team did not suck. They didn't. They really shouldn't be on a list of teams that were bad or that just didn't have a good performance at all this week. But I wanted to have a conversation about this team, and I feel like until things get right, we're going to be having conversations about this team just about every week if these trends continue with the Los Angeles Chargers. And again, they did not suck. Like they weren't bad today, but they let another game that they should have won slip away. And this is a theme. And their pass defense was bad today. They did an actually decent job of stopping the run against a team that wants to run the ball with Derrick Henry. They held him under 100 yards rushing. Justin Herbert, again, had another fantastic game for the most part. I think he threw for over 300 yards, a couple scores. Mike Williams had 83 yards on 8 catches. Again, they were missing Austin Eckler, but Justin Herbert, again, did everything he could to keep the Chargers in this game, go down the field, move the offense with efficiency. Like, that's not the issue right now in Los Angeles. Joshua Kelly, actually, who stepped in place for Austin Eckler, showed some decent things. They missed Austin Eckler. Like, let's not understate that. But, like, they did not play a bad game offensively. And they actually stopped the run really well. But their passing defense, I have some stats here. Last week, Ryan Tannehill, 3 interceptions and a 28.8 rating. This week against the Chargers, doesn't turn it over, completes 83% of his passes, and has a 123.3 rating. The Chargers, listen to this, they're the 33rd team in the Super Bowl era, which began in 1966, to score 50-plus points combined and have 0 turnovers offensively through 2 games. They're the 50th team to do such. And they're the only team of those 50 to start 0-2.
Wow. That is the most Chargers thing I've ever heard.
Since 2010, teams that have 275 plus passing yards and no turnovers in a game are 382 and 96. That's a winning percentage of 80%. The Chargers, they're one of those 96. They're one of those 20%, as they had 275 or more passing yards and no turnovers today, found a way to lose. Ryan Tannehill had his second best game in terms of completion percentage today against that Chargers pass defense. They gave up some explosive plays, and they just found another way to lose today. So, again, I don't think they played terrible. I think this is a really good roster. I still think they can win games and potentially make the playoffs in the AFC, but it's a reoccurring trend here that if this doesn't get fixed soon, like Brandon Staley, he's got to start being talked about as a guy that's being on the hot seat. So I don't know. I just find it interesting what's going on in Los Angeles right now with the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, the seat isn't just hot right now. It's on fire. Like
Yeah.
it's not even sittable right now. Like he's got to have like he's got to have like one of those racing suits that's fireproof. He's just sitting there chilling in just on fire, like smiling like everything's all right. But no, you're not all right, bro. Like get it together. Anyways, it's just hard to not find humor in this. I just struggle. Like I know I'm supposed to be, extremely, you know, what's the word? Unbiased, I guess. But in this situation, where the Chargers organization had the opportunity and every right to, move on from Brandon Staley and didn't, at this point, I mean, he never showed he could create a good defense with this roster before this year. And now he's in there calling the defense. And you could argue that this defense has gotten worse in a lot of ways. They're stopping the run. That's the positive thing. And you can do a lot of good things when you're able to stop the run against offenses in the NFL. But when you're playing cover four and you're sitting back and just letting quarterbacks pick you apart in the short and intermediate passing game, I just don't like that style of defense. I would much rather have a guy like Brian Flores who is going to attack you and just not let the offense dictate anything. They're going to like guys like Brian Flores and Jim Schwartz, they're not going to let you do anything comfortably. And it just doesn't feel like with Brandon Staley's defense, anything is uncomfortable.
Yeah. Were the Chargers one of your teams? Who's your next team?
The Chargers were one of my teams. Yeah, I should have made that clear.
Okay.
Yeah, the Chargers, I think it was hard to keep them off the list just because of the expectations there.
Yeah, and okay, we have a couple of comments. We have a live viewer. Mac says Sunday Night Football review. Maybe we can get to that in a minute. And then he also says Justin Herbert is not that guy. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean or where he's getting that from. Justin
take.
Herbert.
I like it though. Spicy.
Yeah, I mean, hey. So I didn't really have like a third team that I wanted to like call out and that played just terrible, but maybe if you have one, we can talk about that, or we can just do a review of Sunday Night Football.
I wanted to have a conversation about the Denver Broncos real fast, and then we'll get into this Sunday Night Football stuff just because we had a request for it. So real quick, I think Russell Wilson played good enough to win that game today. There was really no reason at all to blame him in any way or blame that offense really at all. It just feels like Denver just in the simplest way to explain it possible, just has a execution problem when it comes to winning close games. We saw it last year. We've seen it for years, really, with Denver. Even when they had Teddy Bridgewater, when they were, I think, 5-5 and kind of in the playoff hunt with Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, year after year, it's been Denver just hasn't been able to win close games. Their defense has been good, but it just feels like whenever they're on defense with the chance to seal a game with a defensive stop, they can't make the play. And I don't know how to fix that. I don't know really what the reason is behind that, but it's concerning.
Yeah. It's weird. Like, what is going on in Denver? Russell Wilson, looked like himself today.
Yeah.
He played good. The deep ball was working. They created some explosive plays. They were efficient on offense, especially in the first half. Then in the second half, I don't know what happened. And they still, had an opportunity to tie up that game on that. Do you see that Hail Mary? That was kind of crazy at the end.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
But they failed on the 2-point conversion. I don't know. They had some key defensive penalties, which kind of played a role in that today. But I don't know. It's weird in Denver. Again, there are some things that you can point to, even though they're 0-2, especially the player Russell Wilson today, who, as you mentioned, played extremely well enough to win that game. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with Denver. Let's get to this Sunday Night Football review. And Max says 2 straight game-winning drive opportunities, 3 and out and 4 and out. Now is that
that's fair?
It's fair. Is that all in Justin Herbert? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that's fair. So with that, let's talk about his Dolphins. Mac is a fan of the Dolphins. So let's talk about this Sunday night football game. What were your main takeaways from tonight?
Well, going into the game, I mean, anytime you have a elite offense playing Bill Belichick, you just know that Bill's going to have something up his sleeve. And really, the thing that he had up his sleeve was Christian Gonzalez. Once they put Christian Gonzalez on Tyreek Hill, I mean, they weren't getting into they weren't really getting Tyreek Hill involved at all at that point. It was really that touchdown in the red zone where it was an amazing play call and they schemed it up perfectly. Other than that and a few short grabs here and there, the Dolphins' deep passing game was really bottled up. And you got to give the Patriots defense credit for that. And that, in my opinion, was the real reason the Patriots were even able to keep this close at all. I think right now it's hard to look at the Patriots and not feel kind of positive. I mean, you played against presumably, we don't know for sure, but I mean, you went against the defending NFC champs in week 1 and then played possibly the hottest offense in football and kept both games close and had a chance to win at the end in both games. So I actually come away from this game feeling positive about the Patriots, believe it or not. And then from the Dolphins side of things, I mean, Tua is just on another level now. He's seeing the defense and his pairing with Mike McDaniel, with his ability to get the ball out quickly and just throw with anticipation and see everything before it happens. I mean, it's Drew Brees esque. I mean, it's precision, and it's just fun to watch, man.
Yeah, they're really fun to watch. Mike McDaniel is, I mean, we got to start mentioning him as, I think, an elite head coach when it comes
Yeah,
to his offensive acumen and his ability to call plays. Uh, they're fast. Um, there's really no way to, like, it's impossible to really bottle up this Miami Dolphins offense. They're going to move the ball. They're going to score points. That's a good Patriots defense. And, I mean, this Dolphins offense is going to be hard to stop all year. They're explosive, they're creative, they're innovative. Um, you hope that that offensive line stays healthy. You hope Tua can stay healthy, but he looks really good. If he keeps playing like this down the stretch of the season, he could be a candidate for MVP, as Imy mentioned earlier in a text conversation that we had. And I thought that defense today, they did a better job than last week of bottling up the run game. And they, they didn't really allow the Patriots to get anything explosive going. And yeah, I come out of this game feeling pretty positive about the Patriots as I did last week when they lost to Philadelphia. They pretty much bottled up the explosive plays by Miami. And they turned the ball. I mean, you saw the special teams play. That was brilliant. We saw Christian Gonzalez get that pick on the underthrown deep ball by Tua, where I think he had some pressure in his face, but regardless, that was a great play on one of the fastest players that we've ever seen play football, Tyreek Hill. So that's good. There are things you can point to with the Patriots. I think Mac Jones has done a pretty good job of distributing the ball, being accurate in the short to intermediate game. Still want to see some more explosiveness out of this Patriots offense. It feels like, oh yeah, Mac makes a great point. Can't forget to mention the night that Raheem Mostert had. I thought they ran the football early and often, and they basically set the tone early, saying we're going to run the football, and you're going to, you might stop it at times, but then we can attack with all the things that we can do in the passing game, whether it's Jalen Waddle, whether it's Braxton Berrios, who was great on special teams, whether it's Tyreek Hill whoever it might be. You mix Raheem Mostert when he's healthy, really good player, with Devon A-Chain and the other backs that they have. I mean, I texted this. It might be a little early, but right now I think the Dolphins are in tier 1 in the AFC in terms of contenders. They didn't even have Jalen Phillips tonight. And give credit to Van Ginkel. I forget his first name, but he played big. And I think Bradley Chubb also had a sack on that one of the last drives by the Patriots. So they got pass rushers, they got weapons, they got a quarterback who looks like he could be an MVP. They got everything. They got a brilliant head coach who's on the right side of the ball as an offensive innovator. Right now, Dolphins look dangerous. And we talked about them in our preseason preview. You were really high on them in particular, and they've done nothing to dissuade us of that notion right now.
Yeah, Van Ginkel legitimately looked like Clay Matthews tonight. It was nostalgic in a weird way, like the hair and everything flowing. It was a good game, man. It lived up to expectations for sure. Okay. Now I think we're check boxes on the raw rundown. I'm pretty sure we got all three teams there. Now it's time for our Monday Night Football previews here. We're gonna just run through our keys to both games. Starting with this NFC South game, it's the Panthers and the Saints. I believe it's in Carolina. Second ever start for Bryce Young, obviously, coming off a performance where he threw 2 interceptions, going against a good defense in the New Orleans Saints. What are you thinking here, and who you're taking?
Well, it's a divisional matchup, and usually these things, not all the time, but usually these things end up being pretty closely contested, especially when you have two teams who we don't really know what to expect on a game-to-game basis yet. I mean, we're still kind of figuring out what the Saints are. We're still figuring out, of course, what the Panthers are going to be. Obviously, looking at Bryce Young, as you expect from most rookies, it was a shaky first game performance in the National Football League against a improved Atlanta defense. Bryce Young is set to become the third rookie quarterback taken number 1 overall to start on Monday Night Football. I think is what that says here on NFL.com. Again, it was an uneven first impression. Showed some good things, though. Like, he did throw a touchdown. He did exhibit signs that he belongs in this league. And, of course, I mean, we knew Bryce Young is going to eventually figure this thing out. But it's a key game for the Panthers. Like, you don't want to fall to 0-2, especially when it comes to, both divisional opponents. Like, if they lose this game, you already have a loss to the Falcons. You've already had a loss to the Saints. It's a key game for the Panthers. I'm looking for, of course, Bryce Young. But I think for the Saints, Derek Carr basically checked every box last week. He absolutely dismantled the blitz. He was great against the blitz last week. 137.2 passer rating against extra rushers last week. He delivered in crunch time. He went 10 of 13 for 163 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 144 passer rating in the second half last week, leading the Saints to a victory. But for the Saints, they got to be more dedicated and better on the ground. They weren't good on the ground last week. Jamal Williams, who I really like, only rushed for 45 yards on 18 carries. That's 2.5 yards per carry. And then Tony Jones was their only other running back to receive carries. They also have Kendre Miller, who's listed as questionable for this game with a hamstring injury, the rookie out of TCU. They're going to have to wait until week 4 for Alvin Kamara to return from his suspension. So I'm looking for the Saints to do a better job of establishing the ground game. I think this Saints offense against this Panthers defense, who's really talented and young, will be a key to the game. I'm not really sure who I'm taking. I'm kind of leaning Saints right now, but I could see a scenario where the Panthers win.
Yeah, it's tough because that New Orleans offensive line worries me. But I think it's easier to trust Derek Carr because he's experienced, and I feel pretty confident that game is going to be close in the fourth quarter. So it's really just going to come down to a play here or there, and my gut is saying pick the Panthers. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Panthers, but I'm pretty much 50-50 here. This is going to be a close divisional game.
Yeah, and we're on pace. We're on good pace. So for the next 5 to 10 minutes, let's talk about the other game Monday night. That's Browns at the Steelers. I'll give my thoughts first. Based on what we saw last week and based on, the injury reports for both teams and the health of both teams right now, it you want to say, I mean, the Browns better football team on paper right now. They're the healthier team. They looked a whole lot better than the Steelers in week one. And they look like a team that, if they can continue what we saw on defense last week, could be dangerous in the AFC. As Deshaun Watson still is kind of figuring it out. We'll see if he can return to top 10 elite form. Here's what I'll say. I'll kind of address it from a Steelers perspective since I'm a Steelers fan. There are some streaks that the Browns are looking to end that they're tired of hearing about, and understandably so. One of which is they haven't won a regular season game in Pittsburgh since Ben Roethlisberger was a junior in college. So that's something that they want to end. They also want to end the Steelers streak of winning 20 consecutive home games on Monday Night Football. And there's another streak after a double-digit loss in the Mike Tomlin era, which, I mean, last week was brutal against a really good team, the 49ers. The Steelers are 10-2 the following week in the Mike Tomlin era following a double-digit loss the previous week. That's the best record of any team in the National Football League. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what gives. I'm picking the Browns. I know people want to give me shit about this Pittsburgh team, but look, Deontay Johnson's out. I find it hard to believe that the Steelers are going to bottle up that Cleveland run game for 4 quarters, given that Cam Hayward is now out. I mean, I like Keanu Benton, but is that going to be enough? I don't know. Look, TJ Watt, I expect to do what TJ Watt does. I think the Steelers can get pressure on Deshaun Watson, but I'm worried about what the Browns defensive front can do against the Steelers offensive line tomorrow, especially at that left tackle spot with Dan Moore and or Broderick Jones. We'll see who plays tomorrow. I think it should be Broderick Jones, but I expect Dan Moore to be out there early and often against Myles Garrett. So I need to see the Steelers create a run game. I'd mix in Jaylen Warren a little bit more than they did last week. And Allen Robinson, Calvin Austin, they're going to have to step up. And Pickett has to play better, flat out. So I'm picking the Browns to win. But I've seen crazier things. It's a divisional game. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I think the Steelers will put on a better performance than they did last week. But, yeah, I don't have a whole lot of confidence right now that in the state of the Steelers as it pertains to health and as Mac mentioned, the biggest problem standing in the Steelers' way, that would be Matt Canada. 100% agree.
Yeah, it's tough. This Browns defense, I still think I don't really know how you would even go about attacking them if you're the Steelers. The run game didn't really work for you like against San Francisco, and obviously it didn't work for the Bengals, but different environment. It's going to be in Pittsburgh. I just feel like Mike Tomlin's just going to be all in on just getting a win in this game. We're going to see some fourth down, maybe some 4th and 4 early on. I just don't think Tomlin's just going to let this team lay over and die. And I'm not ready to trust Watson to go into Pittsburgh and, you know, rewrite history, I guess. It's tough. It's hard to say. I'm leaning Steelers though, and in divisional battles, it's always hard to pick who's who, and that's one of the reasons we haven't been doing predictions anymore, and we're not really going to be doing predictions outside of a couple games here and there. It's just in
We'll
the
do it.
NFL,
We'll do it for the
it's
playoffs.
basically impossible. Yeah, for the playoffs, yeah, of course, but for a regular season game, and especially a division matchup early in the season too, it just feels like a coin flip to me. Kenny Pickett's going to bounce back. I feel confident in that. I think George Pickens is good enough to have a good game as well, but he's going to be the focal point of the Browns defense outside of, maybe Pat Fryermuth here and there. I don't know.
Yeah, and if the Steelers look good but they lose tomorrow, I'm still not going to be hitting the panic button. Like it won't feel good to be 0-2, but this team started 2-6, 2-7 last year, and they ended up 9-8 and on the brink of a playoff spot. We've seen this with Pittsburgh over and over and over. And I mean, the history tells you that, yeah, Pittsburgh's going to win this game. And it's probably not going to be pretty, but they're going to find a way. And the past couple of years, with their backs against the wall, that's when the Steelers have performed at their best, when you don't necessarily expect them to, right? So I would love to see it, but again, if they look good and they lose to what I think is a very good Browns football team, who I believe you ranked in the top 8 of our power rankings this past week, and I wouldn't necessarily, argue with that, although I did not have them in there quite yet. I won't panic because you get Las Vegas next week in a game that I think will be winnable for Pittsburgh. They typically love playing those types of teams where the quarterback isn't necessarily a dynamic playmaker. And then they get Houston in week 4 here in Houston, a game which I will be attending in 2 weeks. So some winnable games upcoming for Pittsburgh. It's a tough start, but just look good. If you win, great, but just look good. Look a lot better than you did last week.
Yeah. I think as a Cowboys fan, I can relate to that for sure. There was moments last year with, especially when Dak went down in week 1, I was like, okay, Cooper Rush, just like, I'm not expecting a whole lot. Just go out there and don't lose, if that makes sense.
And one more thing. Sorry to interrupt. There was a theory last week that early on in that game, I think it was the first drive for Pittsburgh, when Pickett got sacked and kind of slammed to the ground, that he could have been concussed for the rest of that game. I don't know if that's true. The Steelers say he wasn't. But definitely maybe that even if he wasn't concussed, that may have kind of just thrown him off the rest of the game, kind of rattled him a little bit. So I think the biggest thing for Pittsburgh is you gotta give Pickett some time to throw, and not try to not let Myles Garrett and his counterparts, Zadarius Smith and others, Dalvin Tomlinson, wreck this game.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't want him throwing helmets again. That would not be good.
And please, let's not see Mason Rudolph. Please, no. Okay, so with all that being said, any parting shots before we get out of here?
My parting shot is um, Cowboys Nation needs to calm down a little bit. It's September. Like we're this is not January. We need to chill a little bit. I see a lot of Cowboys fans on Twitter drinking the Kool-Aid, and I don't blame them. But a lot can happen between now and January. So just chill out a little bit. That's all I'm saying, Cowboys fans. Just chill.
Yeah. Newt, Ron Lower Third. Like and subscribe to our channel. I don't really have a parting shot. I guess I do. Um, I'm not sure if there's. It's still early, but I'm not sure if there's like an elite dominant team in college football this year. I haven't seen it yet, at least. So we'll see. We're going to have a Deep in the Heart of Longhorns episode, which is a college football show hosted by myself tomorrow with a special guest before Monday Night Football, I think. We haven't really talked about it, but I think that's the plan. And this next week of college football is loaded. So,
Ridiculous. Yeah.
ridiculous slate. I think there's like 6 games between ranked teams or something unimaginable like that. It doesn't come around too often in college football, so that's going to be good. But with all that being said, just like the Bears' chances of being good, we are going, gone. Peace out.
Yeah. Good luck getting a quarterback.